Welcome, Mars and Gemini. And continuing the reading from this book. And Mars is a lot shorter, as it should be, for these readings. So let's get into it. Mars and Gemini. Mars and Gemini reflects a desire structure that is energized through the motivation of independent thinking and the desire to question every accepted opinion established by any authority. So we look at the combination of Mars and Mercury. Independent thinking, questioning the authority. As a result, the mental temperament is argumentative and combative. I knew someone who has Mars and Gemini in the 7th. This doesn't mean that they're argumentative and combative all the time. It just means that they can be, their mental temperament, again, looking at the whole chart, depends on what else is in the chart. There's different degrees of this. But it does mean that there is a reason that there's Mars and Gemini, meaning there's a reason that they have to speak and be argumentative at times. They could be in a position where they have to argue, like being an attorney or something like that. It could serve some function. It's not always just a bad thing. Mars and Gemini desires to create its own mental constructions about the nature of things, to expand its level of awareness and consciousness through the expansion of its mental horizons. Anytime you see Gemini, Sagittarius, that angle, when you have a planet there, there could be this reason. There could be these reasons of things happening so that they can, and this learning, this, you think of discussions through these debates or information, the drive for travel and seeking information so that they can expand their consciousness quicker than, say, someone with other placements. And that comes back to maybe this idea of their evolution. Mars and Gemini's evolution can be quicker, Mars, Mercury, than somebody else's with different placements. Say maybe a Mars and Taurus. This will occur through the formation and reformulation of mental constructions or ideas that become ever larger and more expansive. The desire to continue to expand and know more means Mars and Gemini will even challenge its own ideas at key points in the evolutionary journey. It's that idea of Gemini being chaotic, going from this point to that point. There's nothing wrong with that. This is actually a way of, you could call it chaos theory, this idea of chaotically experiencing a bunch of different things, and then in their mind, this is where their mind will work, and then it can formulate a concrete idea that way. And they can actually be geniuses in this way. This is how I prefer to coach sports, or to learn sports, particularly tennis. People just don't quite understand it because they need that 1, 2, 3 ABC, that linear learning. Mars and Gemini will not prefer, or just generally speaking, would not prefer linear learning. The desired nature is very restless and curious and can pursue many different directions simultaneously. The weakness in this is not following through or completing anything. 2 pages in a book are read without completing the book, since what was curious or interesting yesterday may be boring today. And I talked about this with Venus and Gemini. There's nothing wrong with this, but when they, especially with relationships, this can be very frustrating. This is not, when tied into the Capricorn patriarchal reality, where the guilt, where it's like, instead of me being the flirtatious person that I am in one relationship, I'm going to go and be very independent so that I cannot feel guilty when I do what I like to do. Even if the partner is okay with their flirtatious nature to some degree, with some boundaries, they still won't be able to do this because of their guilt that they feel. And That's a shame, because if they can get over this, then they can be free to be the Mars and Gemini themselves and still have satisfying, secure relationships. Sexually, Mars and Gemini manifests a mental desire to explore and understand the diversity of all possible sexual orientations and behaviors. To say that Mars and Gemini is sexually curious would be an understatement. Many will study the sexual traditions of many other cultures in the desire to obtain as much sexual knowledge as possible. Keyword study. They love to study and to think about all the possibilities sometimes without actually doing anything. It's certainly not doing anything consistently. On a physical level, Mars and Gemini can find it very difficult to disengage its mind from the sexual act. There's an inner voyeur that is forever observing the physical act of sex. This observation creates a mental amazement regarding sexual activities. This can be frustrating to the individual as well as to the partner. This frustration can lead to the use of sexual methods that lead to physical intensity as a way of bypassing the mental orientation inherent within Mars and Gemini. See, a lot of this stuff crosses over, where you can see you don't need someone who might be a teacher in the sexual field may not even need astrology to get to the ideal. But this is just getting into these planets and these signs are showing the pathways of an individual person, where they're coming from, where they are, where they're headed, what they're trying to get through to become really nothing. They came from nothing, and to get back to being nothing, because that's what we are here in the earth. We're in a state of confusion. It's arguable that this is the hell, where the work is something, the going from nothing to something and back to nothingness again. There can be strong desires to experiment with sexual toys or devices as a way of achieving sexual stimulation. There can also be a desire to challenge the limitation of gender roles or the manifestation of bisexual or homosexual desires. That could be the case with all air signs, for sure. At best, Mars and Gemini creates sexual versatility and adaptability to the desires of both partners. In and of itself, Mars and Gemini will not preclude any possible sexual scenario, at least not mentally. Mars and Gemini can also reflect karmic or evolutionary conditions that manifest as sexual issues between one's siblings or parents. When this occurs, the sexual development of the Mars and Gemini person will be arrested. This will lead to a form of sexual infantilism where the individual will be sexually immature as an adult. You can see this with religious priests, nuns, and things like that. They'll have Mars and Gemini. Probably could find some famous saints that have Mars and Gemini. The genital region, as a result, can be frozen because of the nerves. Gemini have become restricted. In females, this can manifest yada yada yada. About men, I'm not going to get into that. As their lives evolve, these individuals must embrace the Sagittarian polarity. This means a desire to actualize one guiding philosophical system of thought that serves as a foundation to which the various mental constructions can be consistently related. To find this can be difficult, but not really. There's only so many. Here's the thing. There's only so many philosophies here on Earth. Okay, there's not infinite philosophies. There may be infinite realms that the mind can go to outside of Earth, but here on Earth, there's only infinite guiding. There's only so many guiding philosophical systems to get you through this life. And I think if you're really doing the work as a Gemini, you can go through them fairly quickly and then figure out which one you want to use through what works best for this life. Now, figuring out which one works best is to consistently relate to is probably more of a challenge, but the what's there is there. It's not especially now in today's world, the information age, you can get books for free on all these things and figure out which path you want to go. I mean, really, you could break it down into 3 paths: the left-hand path, the right-hand path, and the center path. So just want to mention that. This creates a consistency of perspective and a consistency of thought. It allows for a consistency of interpretation of the phenomenal reality that we participate in. This allows you to do work. For example, I'm putting out information on astrology. There's only so many ways to look at astrology. Okay, I've looked at all of them, or at least I think I've looked at most of them. I choose the direction I want to go, and that's it. You have to do that. I commit to it. And then maybe in the future I change. Maybe I don't. But that's just an example. I could look at, I choose astrology as a guiding philosophical system to look at life through right now. I could choose Christianity. I know enough about Catholicism and Christianity, but I choose not to. I choose this. And I'm not afraid to follow it through, which I think is important for people to understand. There's no need to fear. It's a learning process. That's how you learn. That's how you know, here in the age of Aquarius, that's how you know what something is, by following it through to the end and committing to it. You want to know what marriage is? You follow it through. You commit. You get married for 15, 20 years. Now you know. Now you know something about the concept of marriage versus reading about it. It is also important that this polarity be embraced, Sagittarius, so such individuals learn to access their own unique truth versus the truths that are all too often projected on them by their people. That's another thing. That's how you learn to bring an individual perspective on it. I've lived this life. I've lived the left-hand path. I've lived the right-hand path. I've lived the center path. And now I can bring a unique perspective that only I can bring to, or only my type, my personality type, or whatever, my type of human can bring. Truth versus the truth. Yeah, sexually, it means to distinguish between natural sexual laws and expressions and sexual fads of the day. To move from try anything once to this is consistent with who I am and what I need. Mars and Gemini will have all of this, need to learn about these things so that they can figure out who they are. This is one of the greatest placements to have, in my opinion, in astrology, if it's used in this way, because these people can come to a very strong, personal, individualistic truth that is very fascinating to be around.